Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Pure Digital Passion podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. Today is actually a follow-up podcast from one I had just about a month ago with Simon Bransfield-Garth from Akili AI, and we had an interesting conversation about the practical deployment of AI solutions in Kenya. And during this conversation, we sort of set the groundwork to understand where Akili AI is coming from, also a little bit of background from Simon, who, as you may know, was at the University of Cambridge doing AI over 40 years ago, if you can believe that. And today we have with us also his colleague, Shikoli, who's the CTO at Akili AI. And we're going to have a bit of a different conversation today. We're going to talk a little bit about what the deployment side of what they're doing in the marketplace is, where predominantly they're focusing on the financial services sector, working with cooperatives and other types of organizations like banks to actually practically deploy AI within the marketplace. So thank you very much for joining us once again, Simon and Shikoli.
Great to see you again, Moses.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
So when we ended our conversation last week, or rather last month, Simon, you left us with an interesting point, which was, organizations need to think about the things that AI is actually doing within their organizations rather than making assumptions. Maybe we can start there, and you can tell us a little bit more about your thoughts from that point of view.
Yeah, I think so. I think the sort of light bulb moment in our conversation last time was many organizations say, well, we haven't deployed AI, so it's something we need to think about in the future. But actually, when you look at organizations, you find that AI is absolutely everywhere inside their organizations already. It's in all of their existing tools have had AI added to it. Employees are using AI just on their laptops and so on. And so what we have is what we call shadow AI, which essentially is unmanaged AI within the organization. And so there's an increasing realization that, just like people did with GDPR 5 years ago, there's a process that has to be managed just to ensure that the organization is properly covered. And actually, it's a bit more urgent than people had thought. You can't just sit and wait because we haven't done anything with AI. Well, guess what? You're actually doing a lot with AI already. So I think this is beginning to become a board level discussion now, which is, okay, so where is our AI risk register? Have we actually thought about all of this AI that must be in our business? Where is it? What is it? What is it doing? Where's our data going? So that, I think, has been a change which has kind of snowballed over the last couple of months.
Yeah. And also, again, you said something about focusing less on what AI is and more on what AI can do. Maybe you can go a little bit more into that. I think that was also something you left us with.
Yeah. So I think, so when did ChatGPT come out? It was sort of November 2022. Yes. Right. So not that long ago. And at that time, it was the shiny toy, right? And it was the AI was the center of what's going on. Today, there are a dozen manufacturers of things that look like ChatGPT. And actually, it's not the AI itself, it's the way that you go use it that really matters. So an example I sometimes use is, imagine you'd invented the jet engine, right? Everybody's going mad for this jet engine because the jet engine is going to revolutionize the world, right? A jet engine is completely useless until you've gone and built an aeroplane around it, right? So now what people are doing is focusing less on building jet engines and more on building aeroplanes that actually take you across the Atlantic or whatever. So that's the really key shift, is the value. Although the AI is the disruptive technology, the value is not in the AI. The value is actually sitting in the thing that you wrap around the AI that means that it does real things for you in your business.
Fantastic. Shikoli, I'd like to come to you. You've been on the ground working with Simon, actually deploying AI in Kenyan organizations across different sectors, but predominantly in the financial services. And I just want to understand, what are you seeing in the market? What has surprised you the most, pleasantly or otherwise? And how are Kenyan organizations actually responding to AI?
No, I think someone told me this the other day. Someone told me that there's so much noise around AI to a point where, like, just senior managers have become numb to listen.
They don't want to hear it anymore.
Stuff about AI. So when you get into a place where everybody is kind of now just doesn't want to listen to AI, I think then you kind of move beyond that and start asking yourselves, like, what can AI really do for business? And I think For us at Akili, we kind of think about it as we have to be practical, which means that when we talk about AI fixing problems, we kind of are asking ourselves, can it practically be done? We even go get our hands dirty to make sure that we can actually get AI to do what we are saying it's going to do. And for us, what we're seeing is we're now seeing more customers coming to us and saying, we like the fact that you're doing practical AI. And I've always been practical in most of the things I've done. I spent almost 20 years in the back rooms of financial institutions seeing processes being automated. And when I look at AI, I'm looking at it as just a continuation of probably just that automation, but it's just different, using a different medium. It might not necessarily be in internet or a mobile phone, but it's just a different medium that probably is 10x what was there before.
It almost sounds to me like, like that famous phrase, I think, from around COVID, digital transformation, right?
Yes.
We can keep talking about all these iterations, but ultimately, it's almost like AI is one of the tools that you pull out of the toolbox to help you achieve certain things as a business, correct? Would you say?
Yeah, I probably put it that way, but I probably put AI a little bit different.
Yeah.
It is, yes, a digital transformation.
Yes.
But what I'll probably say is that the rest of, if you think about it, most companies were looking at digital transformation to just kind of improve a service that they used to provide. And there was
It's incremental, right?
It's incremental.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm seeing with AI is that there's some level of decision making that comes with the AI, to a point where there are certain processes in organizations where ideally the AI can literally do end to end of the process, because guess it kind of can follow a certain procedure and get things done end to end. So I think AI is at a different level. I think it's playing at a decision level of the organization.
Okay.
And that's why I hinted to you earlier on when we were just chatting that, previously everyone would just say, if you don't have good data, digital transformation is dead. But now AI is beyond just good data. AI also, if your decision making is not clearly documented somewhere, then your AI will also not work. So AI goes beyond data, goes also at your decisions, and this starts asking, do you even know how many decisions you make in your organization? Who makes those decisions? What if they make a mistake? Will you be able to catch that error that's been made in the decision? So those are some of the things that we look at in our implementations and ask ourselves, if the AI was making the decision, how will we know it has made the wrong decision? Because that's basically now where we're heading with AI.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Simon, coming back to you, I mean, obviously, I think Akili's been around about 2 years, give or take.
A bit more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine at inception, you started having these wonderful early conversations in various organizations and companies here in Nairobi,
Yes.
Evangelizing what AI can do for them. And then we moved across 2 years on or so. How's that changed? What does that look like, 2 years back and now?
Yeah.
When you have these conversations with these same organizations, what's changing? What's shifting from a practical standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think when we started, AI was all the rage, and it was very much coming in and talking about what is AI, what does it do, and so on. I think, as Shikoli says, most people in companies are sick of hearing people talking about AI, right? They're not really interested in the AI itself. They're interested in, what's it going to do for me and what's it going to do for me next week. And that's really the change that we're seeing, that people are beginning to see this as just another tool. It may be a fantastically powerful tool, but it's just another tool. And how do we get it to do things at an operational level? And I think, going back to the point about digital transformation, I found digital transformation frustrating because it was just an umbrella term for, putting technology into your business, if you like. So you go to a board and you say, right, what is our digital transformation strategy? And they go, well, I don't know, maybe spreadsheets, I don't know.
Or using Zoom for meetings.
Or using Zoom for meetings or something, exactly, right? And frankly, you'd be surprised how many companies' AI strategy is about that developed right now. So it seems to me, don't ask what is our AI strategy. Nobody can write down a 5-year AI strategy. Nobody knows where it's going over that timescale. Instead, say, what are the business problems we can solve now with AI? Let's go solve them. And then we solve the next one, and let's solve the next one. And this has got to be driven from the point of view of business transformation rather than technology transformation. It's business transformation that happens to be sitting on top of technology. And I think that's really one of the key realizations, that people are going, this isn't a 5-year mega project. This is about, right, let's solve specific problems today and make it happen. And that's why, the implementation focus that Shikoli mentioned is so critical, because you're being measured by results rather than measured by how many buzzwords you put in your PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
The real stuff.
Yeah.
What about your perspective in those 2 years? What have you seen?
I think I used to work on projects where it would be like 9 months before we go live.
Wow.
You understand?
Yes.
If you work on an ERP implementation, it'll take you 9 months. One of the key things I noticed with AI is there are probably two things. The first one is that you can get an AI project done probably in 3 to 4 months. That's the first thing. But the other one, which is pretty shocking, was that when you're trying to convince an organization to, get an AI use case going, you also tell them there's a high possibility that we could fail, which is completely different from what used to happen before. Because to me, it's almost like you're introducing experimentation. If you remember how fintech companies work, where you say like, look, we gotta fail fast. So one of the things that I found very interesting is that I also have to factor in the fact that, yes, the budget is being allocated, but there's a high possibility that what we are working on, what we're experimenting on, could easily fail, which is hard for, especially if you look at companies that are used to, you allocate budget and you start seeing results the next day. Now, when you're telling them, look, this AI project could fail tomorrow, they're like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, but that's the cost of actually trying out, making sure things are
and
working.
doing things on the very frontier. Yeah.
So it's different. It's a different technology. It requires you to change your mindset on how you get things done. But the beauty of it, you find yourself going back to like the fundamental frameworks that you used. If you've ever taken a business course, one of the things you find out is that you do a business case.
Yes.
And in the business case, of course, you start with a thesis that says, look, I think I can reduce the time it takes us to serve customers from 24 hours to 4 hours. You start with that. That's like your why. And then now after that, you go to the hard things, which is how do you communicate to your employees that you're about to bring in AI? How do you manage regulatory stuff? Because also there's a regulator somewhere in a corner. And then just how do you make sure that there's proper communication to everybody that, this is what we're going to get out of the journey we're embarking on, and it could fail. So, those are some of the things that have really, really changed. I don't think, they used to really happen in the ERP time.
Yeah, those mega projects that take forever, which I think brings me back to you, Simon. If you think about the large consulting firms today, many of whom are now in big trouble. I know we read about KPMG the other day and how they used AI to do something interesting in Australia.
Yeah,
that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
So these sort of multi-million dollar engagements. Akili, on the other hand, does things a little bit differently. I think you kind of use a more like an MVP approach. You identify a specific business process or business pain point. And really, the idea is that it compounds, right? You do this, you do that. And then, instead of one mega 5-year project, you have 20 small projects a year. Why is this the right model for a market like Kenya?
Well, so I think, just touching on Shikoli's point there, I think one of the things that's unique about AI is that quite often you end up failing upwards. So you start off with a particular idea of what you want to do.
Yes.
And you kind of do it, and then you go, actually, that wasn't what we wanted to do at all. We actually wanted to do something much bigger, much more impactful.
Okay.
So actually, this sort of experimental type cycle, if you like, as Shikoli says, very often what happens is you implement the AI and you realize that actually the process that you've got is no longer relevant because you've just replaced a chunk of it. And actually, you can do things in a totally different way. So we had one customer where they said, right, we've got a decision maker. We want to reduce their time from an hour down to 5 minutes. And we did that. And then they realized that actually the rest of the process took a week. And so we ended up working with them to put AI into the entire process. And so take a 1 week process down to an hour, as opposed to taking a 1 hour process down to 5 minutes, which just made no difference to the end-to-end if we'd done it that way. So that, I think, is the sort of Kenyan insight is, there's a huge amount of hyperbole around AI, and please, everybody, just ignore it, right? It's a waste of time. It's a load of VCs doing their thing. Just ignore it. Focus on the practical, what does this mean for me type aspects of it. And that's what Kenyan companies can do. There are so many places where you can say, right, how do I just get rid of the glue in this process? Why is it when I go for a passport, I can't get it authorized within 20 minutes, right? No reason, but the system doesn't support it right now. Why, when I want to order this or check that, or I want to make a hospital appointment or whatever, why do these things always take so long? And the AI can just take all of that glue out. So you can really change the customer experience by rethinking, as Shikoli says, not just how do you fix your existing slightly broken processes, but how do you come up with a whole new process which is hugely more efficient than the one you had before. So that's the real opportunity, and it's particularly true in Kenya, where a lot of things still have legacy processes which are just ripe for being replaced.
So what I'm hearing you say, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that it's not just about optimizing the processes. It's almost like literally chucking out the old process and imagining it with an AI workflow end to end and what that actually looks like.
And that sounds really scary.
It does.
And so what tends to happen is people go, whoa, you want me to reinvent my business? That's we're not doing that, right? So what we do is we do it bottom up. We say, right, let's fix this little bit of a problem and let's evolve it and evolve it and evolve it. And before you know it, you've reinvented your business, but you didn't go in with the objective of throwing your business up in the air and having it come down, look differently, because that's the classical opportunity of wasting 2 years and tens of millions of shillings doing some mega project and ending up at the end with something that was no better than what you started with. You've got to do it grounded in reality, but then evolve and evolve and evolve. And that's why this whole iterative MVP type model works really well.
I imagine one of the benefits of that is obviously from a cost management standpoint, or the investment being put in, it means that your clients are getting it sort of in manageable, snackable pieces rather than a full buffet that you possibly couldn't digest in one go, right?
Yeah. And you can persuade them to go do it. If you go to somebody and say, right, please give me 100 million shillings and we're going to reinvent your business based on an AI technology that is changing every 6 weeks. That's kind of a difficult sell, right? If you say, actually, we've identified these 3 critical business problems that you've got and we can make a material impact to those 3 problems, fine, you go do it, you solve that, you get credibility, you get confidence, and then you do it again, do it again, do it again. And it becomes a transformative journey rather than a sort of one-off purchase in that sense.
Fantastic. Shikoli, I'd like to understand maybe a little bit around the technical gears behind an actual engagement, right? Looking at it week to week, even as we talk about breaking it to these sort of smaller constituent bits, maybe it's a customer service optimization or a credit scoring process or something of that nature. What does that actually look from a engagement level? Really, working with a client week in, week out, looking at this one little sliver of their business and then gradually fixing it. I mean, what does that actually look like practically?
So one of the things that I've really kind of picked up that's different from what I used to do before, I always say, show me the pain owner. So I actually, last week, I just decided to do a pain survey to one of our clients. And it's amazing, like what happens when you get someone who owns a pain, the person who's sleeping in the office doing bank reconciliation, the person who receives this document at the end of the month on the 29th, and they're expected to have like the final reports to the board by Tuesday the next week, and it's a Saturday night. So what happens is that when I find a pain owner, the paying owner is willing to talk to you for hours. In fact, they even go up and set up their own private WhatsApp channels. And they're like, by the way, I was thinking about what we were discussing, that bank reconciliation. This is what happens. This is a statement side received. This is what happens when that statement comes in. This is the biggest place I have pain, and you'll find the majority of their pains are around maybe the data is just too much. And sometimes like the AI is also really good at their data structure, being able to just look at unstructured data and be able to make sense of it really quickly. So for me, I like talking to paying owners, and then I introduce structure to it. I try and have them document how they work. And then I ask them, okay, how would you know if this is working? Do you have 1 or 2 KPIs? Now, you can have a good KPI. One good KPI I like doing is, of course, quality of life, which is just qualitative. And also,
meaning he's going home at a decent hour.
That's qualitative. Someone tells you, look, I don't mind spending some time with my wife at the end of the month. You get what I'm saying? They'll tell you that. Or you'll have a quantitative number, and the quantitative number will be, our customer support right now takes 72 hours. I would like to reduce it to 24 hours. That's what the customer charter states. Or the other day I was talking to one of the local organizations, and they're like, oh, by the way, we usually get phone, when we record all the calls that come into the organization, we have 8,000 of them. And guess what? We can only listen in on 0.5% of those 8,000 calls. Those are paying owners, because guess what? What you're missing, you can imagine if you get 8,000 calls and you're only listening in on 0.5%, don't even know what
there's no insight,
There's
right?
no insight. And then now we look at it and we ask ourselves, okay, how does good look like? So now we're getting to a point where we are asking them how good looks like. And then now when you bring AI to the table and you tell them, look,
yes,
here is a recording of all the phone calls you've had the past 3 weeks. And here is the customer service people who need to go for extra training because they were a little bit rude on that call. Or here is that customer who called you, you didn't answer on time, and here is them talking to you on WhatsApp and you're not responding. And here it is that they're now going to social media and they're now trashing your brand. Now, if you can connect all that, it makes sense. So I usually look for those paying owners, because paying owners just want the pain to go away. And to me, that's really, really different now, because, previously it used to be more of like the CEO wants the reports immediately and the system is not giving it to them. So now make sure you automate the whole process and all the data is clean and everything. The AI is a little bit different in that case. So once I get a paying owner, I just take them through understanding how they work.
Yes.
Then take some time with my team, just prototype, like, how would this thing work if we were to introduce AI in it? Definitely, like simple things like when you receive a phone call and the customer service rep has to log on to this CRM platform. Just a logging in process probably takes like 5 steps. Clicking on 5, 6, 7 different steps to be able to do what? To be able to get a record, just the current record of that customer takes probably 6, 7 minutes. What if, the AI could just connect to all these systems and surface all that information? When the call comes in, it doesn't have to be structured data. It can even be unstructured data. Can read the PDF, can read the invoice from last week. Yeah. So I think those are the different things, and that's why it's actually really interesting doing practical AI. It's actually fun because you see the joy of removing that pain on someone's face.
Not to mention the bottom line impact as well in terms of how the business is operating.
Yeah.
Coming back to you, Simon, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the surgical approach, the micro slivers of the business. Are you seeing any transition from that original approach? Are you maybe starting to do more higher leverage places, more expansive approaches, maybe as you're sort of building on that knowledge? Is it changing in any way since that original approach?
I mean, so the approach is still the same. But what we're now getting into is we're getting to customers who are on their 3rd project, their 4th project. So we're beginning to become, this is not just a sort of try it out, see if it works type thing. This is now becoming integral to the strategy of the organization. And so we're becoming that sort of trusted provider, if you like, which is helping that organization incrementally transform themselves. So that's really the big change, is we're seeing the activities that we're doing going deeper into the organization, becoming more sort of central to what they're doing. So, if the customers are coming back, I guess we're doing something right, and that's always a a really important proof point for any technology. So, if you sell somebody something and they never talk to you again, that's not always the best. So I'm really pleased to see that that's beginning to snowball within the market.
Yeah. And then, as somebody who's also worked in a lot of big projects here in Kenya myself, I mean, one of the things that I've always found is the risk of scope creep, right? So you go in and you say, this is the one thing we're going to fix. But clients have a tendency to even come back to you the next day and say, no, I had this idea
Yep.
that we can do a little bit more here and a little bit more of that. You keep doing that, and
Yep.
the next thing is 3 months later, you're dealing with a project that's no longer what you started with. How are you guys able, especially given the fact that to some extent, I think AI projects are almost exotic or unique by nature right now. They're not particularly common. How are you dealing with the fact that scope creep probably is a real risk? I think it is some of the work that you're doing.
So I think it's project management 101, really.
Yeah.
So you basically document the change.
Yes.
And you define it, and it becomes V2, V3,
and
whatever.
you cost it accordingly.
You cost it accordingly, and off you go. So you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. And actually part of the value, exactly as Shikoli says, a lot of the value of the first project is that it surfaces all of these other things where you could get incremental value. And so you don't scope creep it into the original project. You keep the original project, get it to deliver on time, show the economic value. But now you've got 16 other projects that you can choose from, which you then prioritize as the next most important things to go and do as a business.
Yeah.
But Shikoli, I don't know, maybe, what do you see? Because in Kenya, there's this tendency of people wanting more, you know?
Yes, and that's why for me I insist on talking to the pain owners.
Yeah.
Because the pain owner will tell you where it's painful the most. You understand? So yes, there's scope creep. Scope creep will always exist. But I think what causes scope creep the most of the time is because you probably were not talking to the right person
To begin with,
begin with. So what is happening with what we do is we really talk to the person who day in, day out is involved in basically that work. You're talking to the credit officer who probably has to read 10,000 documents just per month.
And chances are in prior projects, nobody was talking to them, right?
No. In prior projects, probably you just told, look, there's this ERP we're bringing in, and maybe it's marketing that has brought it in, maybe because it'll allow them to talk on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
But you're not being told, okay, you'll be receiving, marketing has gone out there and has brought in 10,000 customers, and each of those customers, probably each of them has 4 documents, 5 documents. You can imagine as a credit officer, maybe you have to analyze, per month, you probably have to analyze 12,000 documents. That's a pain. Now, when you talk to that person, they are willing to give you their process. They're willing to tell you how it works. And with that, you find that is, if you look at it, scope creep sometimes is because the person who you need to sign off will not sign off until you probably sort it out. But this person knows his pain and they can tell easily that you fixed it, so they give you the best documentation. So for me, scope creep is something that, it depends on how well you run your project earlier on.
Yeah.
Talk to the right people who own the problem. And those people, most of the time, when it comes time to sign off, they will sign off. And if a new requirement comes up, you'll tell them, look, do you still want us to deal with your pain, or you want us to go back to this other one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Simon, I think one of the most exciting things I've learned about Akili as I've interacted with you guys is the fact that you're building agentic systems right here in Kenya. And I think, again, just as we saw AI being this hype thing, now the flavor of the month is agents and agentic. And I think just for our audience, so that they can really appreciate, what is this thing actually? What is agentic? What are agents? How do you actually use them in your work with your clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, an agent essentially is an AI which makes decisions for itself. So if you imagine, ChatGPT, ChatGPT, you can ask it a question, give it an answer. That answer can be an instruction, right? So it can be an instruction to go to the web and get this page or whatever it may be. And that information can come back. That can then be fed back into the AI, and the AI can take that as an instruction to itself. And it can then go round and round in a loop and until it gets to the answer that it wants to get to. And so some people talk about it as being reasoning systems. I mean, it's loosely, it's sort of reasoning, if you like, but it's certainly able to take multiple steps. So it's a multi-stage type activity. the challenge with any kind of a multi-step process is keeping it pointing in the same direction. So I don't know if you've seen that thing. You know, if you get dropped in the jungle in Indonesia, right, guaranteed you will end up going round in a circle, right? If you can't see where you're going, you will go in a circle. You can't tell how big that circle is going to be, but ultimately you will always go in a circle, right? Because you will always deviate off enough that eventually you'll end up going round. So the challenge with agentic systems is that they can do the same thing, and so putting the controls and the other what we call a harness around the agentic systems is critical. And going back to the early analogy, you've got your jet engine,
Yeah.
but you've got to put in all of the flight controls, the wings, the fuselage, the brakes, the everything to make sure that it works. And that becomes, basically, if an LLM is a slingshot, right? You pull it back, you fire it, off it goes, it gives you the answer, right? A jet engine is something that is taking multiple steps. And so you've got to actually fly it in real time. And so it's an order of magnitude more complicated to do, but potentially an order of magnitude more powerful as well.
Okay. I know that there's a very interesting case study that Shikoli, you guys have worked on.
Yeah.
I think with a microfinance organization where there's an agentic component. Can you break that down for us in practical, simple language, exactly what it's doing and what sort of impact it's having for that organization?
Yeah. So I think one of the key things that you have to realize about AI is that AI can actually call tools. It can call what we usually call APIs. And these APIs can actually be used to do work. So one of the things that we did is we found this organization that had one of their processes where a client comes in and says, look, I would like to get a statement request. And then, from there on, they had to be validated. From validation, you have to check several things to just make sure that, they are who they say they are. Then after that, you communicate to them and you tell them, for what you've requested from me, it is going to cost you this much, and then once they tell you how much it's going to cost you, ask them, do you want to pay? And the AI is, of course, handling this autonomously. It says, okay, if you really, really want to pay, okay, it's going to cost you this much. Then you go away, it sends you an SDK push. When you get an SDK push, you type in your password, and there you go. It automatically figures out you've paid. Once you've paid, it automatically sends you the statement. So this whole process, ideally, previously was a process that was taking a long time. But what this client did figure out is, look, this is a use case we can implement. So we went ahead and implemented it. And the funny thing is, I was talking to them the other day, and they told me they were making that AI agent is actually making dollars in thousands every month, and it's just running autonomously. So,
And this is a Kenyan organization right now on the ground.
Yes.
This is not Silicon Valley.
Not yet. Yeah. So when you see such cases, you just realize that if you just are clear of mind of what you're trying to achieve, the AI agent is really good. You can set it as a certain direction. You can put the harness around it to make sure it doesn't go off the rails. And it can actually do work to just easing up some of the pressure you have in most of the organizations, especially around customer service to our clients. Yeah. But we do have a client whose AI agent is actually making money for them.
This sort of sounds a little bit like rocket science to me, because quite often I think we imagine this is in Silicon Valley or somewhere of that nature, but not in Kenya. But clearly we're having it on the ground as well.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me back to you, Simon, because you're working in heavily regulated markets, banks, finance, insurance, deploying agentic systems. So I imagine from that point of view, how do you manage the risk that, this agent is operating properly, that it's not doing anything random or rogue? How are you dealing with the fact that this agent has to be super compliant with these regulations and key considerations for some of these sectors?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's really two parts to that. So one part is a technical part, which is within the harness, we just build in a whole series of guardrails to make sure that the AI does what it's supposed to do, doesn't do anything it's not supposed to do. We have other AIs which are looking at it all the time to go and
Okay.
check it's doing the right things. We have AIs that are looking. So, for instance, where you've got a customer care thing, you've got an AI which is actually looking at the questions that are coming in from the customer, saying, "Is this customer trying to break the system?" Right.
Okay.
So you have those sorts of controls built into the system as is. And then within the regulated space, a lot of the regulation is around, right, this person has to make this decision here, or that person has to make that decision there. So we will still preserve that. We will still have the same individual making that decision. But the point is, we've taken away all of the legwork that they've had to go to in order to be able to go and make that decision. So we will provide them with a recommendation report that says, yep, the photo aligns. Yes, their phone number is the same one as on the application form. Yes, their credit history is this, whatever it may be. And so the individual then, the credit officer, whatever, just goes through the checklist and goes, yep, that's fine. Okay, I approve this. Whereas previously they'd have to spend an hour laboriously just checking through documents or other things. So we've taken all of that sort of inefficiency, if you like, out of the process.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Just to add on that,
Yeah.
I think there's a certain cognitive load that you go through when you're working on a computer. And one of the key principles we have on our end is it possible for us to reduce that cognitive load where, when you're looking at a screen, is it possible that that's information on that screen is so easily explained to you to a point where you can easily make the next decision easily? So you don't have to worry about, let me go search for it here, or let me go look for it here. Because if you look at the way the old systems used to work, I used to call them old, the poor last year, information was hidden somewhere. And for you to make a decision, not only do you have to interpret what you're looking at, but you have to go somewhere else and get that information.
So fragmented, basically.
Yes, so fragmented. So just bringing that information to you in a context that you can easily understand, that really, really makes a huge difference, especially if you're working in a customer service center where you're probably getting bombarded with so many calls. That really, really makes a huge difference. Just that reduction in cognitive load is big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So, Simon, I want to come back again to you because the last time we met, we talked a little bit about Snapshot, which you were just about to launch then.
Yeah.
I had the unfortunate experience of running Snapshot on my own business, and I will not disclose the facts, but the numbers were not particularly
good. It wasn't
good.
99%.
No, it wasn't 99%. We scored very low, but it was kind of an eye-opening moment because it just let me know that when you want to assess your AI readiness and sort of how fit you are for it as an organization, there's so many considerations that many of us in Kenya businesses were not looking at. And I'm just wondering, in the last couple of months or so that this has been running, I don't know whether there's any highlights or perspectives or insights that you've seen as various organizations have taken a snapshot to see where they are. Is there any trends emerging that you're noticing, good or bad, that maybe are telling us a story around how ready Kenyan organizations are for AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things that we're seeing. So we've sort of been collecting the data and looking at it. One of them is not surprising, which is the majority of people have the same experience as you. So they come in and go, right, how AI ready are we? Okay, we're not as AI ready as we thought we were going to be. So I think that sort of confirms what we initially thought.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that people find really valuable is that it doesn't just say, right, you scored 26 out of 100 or whatever. It says, right, these are the priority areas that you need to look at, and these are the specific things you need to go do. And so what people are doing is they're going, okay, right, let's go fix that and let's go and run the thing again in a couple of months' time. All right, our score's gone up by 15%. Well, that's good. And so you can use it as a tool just to sort of monitor progress, if you like, and see how things are going. So I think a lot of people have found it valuable. And whenever somebody talks about coming and doing an audit, you think, oh my goodness, you've got people coming in. It's going to take a week. It's going to take forever. I mean, this thing takes 5 minutes and you just quickly whiz it through. It's free. So you just go on to akiliai.com and just click the button snapshot and and run your report. So it's not something you'd run every week, but actually it's not a bad idea just to go and run it every month and see how you are. And actually the snapshot questions evolve as well as technology evolves. So it's actually not a bad thing to just do it periodically and see where you're at. But yeah, beginning to see some nice engagement now. And I think the feedback we've had from people has been, well, actually, we're delighted that somebody's just giving us something practical. Because, as Shikoli says, there's just a huge amount of noise around AI. It's difficult to know where to get started. So just having a few things where you can say, okay, you just do this, takes 5 minutes, runs an MOT on your AI readiness is something we can do on a regular basis. So yeah, been very, very interesting.
And what comes beyond Snapshot? Because I know there's additional, I think, Assured and Passport.
Yes.
What comes beyond Snapshot?
Yeah, so Snapshot is basically telling you where you are.
Okay.
Pretty much. And there are then two other products. One is Assured, which is helping you build the AI governance process you should have. So in exactly the same way as you and most other organizations will have some sort of formal process around data, around GDPR and so on.
Yes.
Every organization should have some formal process around AI. And so this just takes all the legwork out of that. So you've got a template for your risk register. You've got a template for your AI governance and ethics policy. You don't have to write it all from scratch. You obviously have to read it and customize it to your own needs.
Yes.
But 90% of the work is done for you. So it makes it much, much simpler. And then the other one is Passport, where we've realized that the AI risk is as much a people problem as it is a technology problem. And the biggest problem is individuals not understanding the power of AI and what can go wrong with AI if you misuse it. And so just making sure that people are aware that the answer that AI comes up with may well be wrong, and you need to go and independently validate the suggestions that it's made, particularly if it's come up with numbers. You need to make sure those numbers are real.
Accurate,
right? And so on and so forth. And if I just go and take OpenClaw and I put it on my laptop, I'm actually exposing my entire organization to enormous commercial risk, because in principle, that OpenClaw just takes on all the privileges that you've got. So if you've got access to your internal systems, you've just given OpenClaw access to your entire internal systems. Total nightmare for a business. So training is really key. So that's what Passport is all about, is allowing organizations to make sure that all of their staff are fully aware of the issue so they can manage AI responsibly. And nobody's saying don't use AI. Definitely do use AI. But before you use it, you need to do a driving test. Right?
Fantastic. Yeah,
And,
get your passport.
That's basically what we're doing. Yeah.
So you're really smiling there. I think there's something you want to add.
No. It's funny you brought that up. I don't know if you remember this, but we were talking to one of our potential clients from the banking sector. And he was like, the other day, we just figured out from someone's laptop, there was a transaction happening on the core banking platform, and the person wasn't even on their desk. Meanwhile, there was no traffic, on the machine other than just AI traffic. So someone had just installed an AI robot on their desktop, and it was busy using computer use, connecting into their core banking system and transacting.
And this is like essentially a hack.
Yeah, I don't even it's a hack, or whoever it is just probably figured out they can use AI to do most of their work. But such things, I think for me, what this means is, I always say, I come from a cybersecurity background. The human is always your first shield. That's the way I look at it. It's like your firewall, and if your first firewall is not protecting you from stuff that's happening out there, then you have a problem. When the internet came, we were training everybody on cybersecurity awareness. In fact, these days, if you don't have user awareness, cybersecurity user awareness, you probably fail an audit. But we're not doing the same thing with an AI, and with the AI, and I believe AI is probably far much more dangerous than even internet. So the whole idea for Passport is build up that resilience you need internally. And the other thing about Passport also is, I probably go back to planes. When you're flying a plane, you need to train your people on how to fly the plane. So in Passport, you have this foundational training, or you have your strategic training.
Yes.
So the good thing about Passport is it prepares your people to be able to control this engine. You don't just wake up in the morning and become a pilot. You
build up towards
it.
it.
Build
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So if AI is going to be working in our organizations with us, then we need to make sure that the people who are literally going to be the pilots are actually trained with the necessary skills to pilot this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, guys, I think we're coming towards the end of our conversation. I want to talk about two things specifically. And maybe I'll come back to you, Simon. Mythos and fable. As we know, Anthropic, I think about a week ago, had these yanked. We actually started using Fable, amazing model. And, there was talk of it having been hacked. But basically, I think when Mythos came out, and I think there was Project Glasswing, which was to allow all the financial service providers globally to prepare and secure their systems, and also the big tech companies. What are your thoughts around that whole area? Because I think it sort of caught everyone's attention, because it almost feels like Anthropic is really at the cutting edge of how you use AI in a very productive way in organizations for business, for work. But what are your thoughts around this whole Mythos and Fable and what's happening with Anthropic there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I think what you're seeing in the market is kind of two responses from that. So there's one response which is this is the leading edge model in the world.
Correct, yeah.
And we're being denied this leading edge model, and potentially somebody's going to hold it as kind of my precious, if you like.
Yes.
And everybody else will be a second class citizen. So there's that one view of the world, and that leads into the whole debate about sovereign AI and all of those sorts of things. The flip side is none of the projects that Shikoli has mentioned remotely need the capability that is sitting inside Mythos, right? There are 24 AI models that will work. In fact, we have a customer where we did a demo. It's very funny. I bought Shikoli a Samsung S25 phone.
Yes.
And as a demo, he ran the entire company's AI backend, the entire application, including the LLM, on that S25 smartphone. Now, it took 20 minutes to do it instead of 20 seconds, but this doesn't require a $100 million data center, right? A lot of the problems that we're solving, you can solve with AI, which is nowhere near the bleeding edge of AI capability. So there's kind of two flips. There's yes, you've got the very leading edge AI, and people need to have access to the very leading edge AI. But actually, 99.999% of the problems don't require the very leading edge AI. And the real things that are going to make a real difference to business in Kenya can be done with, frankly, any off-the-shelf AI, but it has to be properly engineered and properly integrated into your business. And really, the work is not in the AI. The work is in the harness. The work is in the plane, not the engine.
I think that's so important for people to understand, that you don't have to be the latest and greatest. You just have to have the one that is best for you right now at the price you can afford.
Good enough is good enough. Yeah.
And I think that pragmatic approach is what we need to start seeing in the market, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe on the same note, Shikoli, I think there's another trend that's happening globally. I think they call it token maxing, which is, I think, the idea that people are burning as many tokens as they can. In fact, apparently some companies, people have actually reached the entire quota for the year. Some people are saying that maybe one of the big trends of the future will be, will your business survive whether you have enough tokens or not? I don't know what you guys think about that.
So there are two perspectives I have to this. The more tokens you have, the more you can do, right? But also, it's important, like, let's assume you have a truck. Even if I give you like fuel to run that truck, unlimited fuel, you get it. If you're not doing something that's productive, it's of no use whatsoever. You understand? So my thinking is that these companies have not really figured out that, you know what, give me fuel, but also be able to tell me what is the most productive thing that I should be able to do with this fuel. Don't just give me fuel and tell me, okay, there you go, drive to whatever you want. You get it. There's a very high likelihood that I'll not do anything productive. So for me, I think it's a phenomenon. I'm glad it's dying because finally people are waking up and they're like, look, what is the ROI on this? What do we really want to achieve? Are we achieving it or not? So having access to tokens, to unlimited tokens, is a good thing, but it's only good when you actually do have something that you can do with those tokens. because you can change a lot with access to a good model. Let's not get that wrong. But if you do not know what you want to achieve with that, that good thing you want,
Yes.
yeah, it goes back to if you don't have a good goal or a KPI, then probably it's a waste of time.
And you got to remember where token maxing came from.
Yes.
Right. So why did Popeye eat spinach? Popeye ate spinach because he was supported by the Spinach Marketing Council, right?
Yes.
The people who came up with token maxing
really?
were the people who made the AIs.
There's a commercial story behind this?
Oh, yes.
I never knew that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The same way as you have soap operas, they were films made so that people would watch the soap adverts, right? So, this is
whose agenda is it, basically?
Exactly. It's all back to front. So token maxing was, in my view, a completely crazy idea, right? Driven by the AI companies, which is get people to use this stuff as much as possible because they will find the most expensive, the most complicated possible use for this technology. And because we're giving it to you basically for free, they won't notice the cost. And then, when we actually start charging you, they'll be locked in, right? But as we've discussed today, the vast bulk of the real world applications of AI are not at the bleeding edge.
No.
They're not AI models that are thinking for 12 hours. They're AI models that are thinking for a few milliseconds. And so there's a difference between what's good for the AI companies, which is burning tokens as fast as you possibly can, and what's good for real businesses in the world, which is being judicious about the way you use AI to actually address the real business problems that you've got. And we're very focused on the second one of those.
And I think it's so appropriate for Africa, of course, and Kenya, where, honestly, we don't have unlimited resources, right? We need to sort of utilize it in an efficient and practical way so that we can get the results without the overhead of, a company in Silicon Valley that's trying to change the world,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of come to the end of our conversation, Simon. And I was thinking, you're dealing with a lot of CEOs and leaders of business in Kenya. If any of them is watching or listening to this, are there any 1, 2, 3 things that you'd want them to take action on as a result of watching this conversation?
I think the key message is you can't wait for AI. AI is here. So, step one, go to www.akili-ai.com, click on the button, which is Snapshot. It'll tell you how ready you are as an organization to be able to adopt AI. And then, as Shikoli has said, focus on the practical applications of AI where it's going to add real value to your business. This is not an abstract board strategy to have an AI strategy. This is about how am I going to make a difference to my bottom line in next quarter's earnings. That's how you should be thinking about AI. And then really adopt it and get the advantage because it's sitting there, it's waiting to do benefit. And the people that get there first are the people who are going to get the most advantage.
Fantastic. So basically an incremental, pragmatic approach.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. To Shikoli, if you're dealing with a technologist, a CTO, the kind of organizations you're dealing with, a startup founder, what's your words of advice for them? What are the things you think they should take away from this conversation?
I think for me, I have a certain mental map around AI. And my mental map tells me I can use AI to either do operational efficiency. I can use AI to improve a service or a product that I provide. And then I can use AI to transform my organization. So with that mental model, then the next question you always need to ask yourself is, how am I using AI to help improve processes or process efficiency? How am I using it to improve products and services? How am I using AI to transform the organization? So with those 3 things, it's very easy now to jump onto the AI train. And when the noisemakers come around, you can tell them, look, my use case is around this, my use case is around this, my use case is around this. That's what we do. We actually help you, we work with you to understand what AI can do for you using those 3 pillars. And then not only that, we then go deeper into the use cases and help you actually implement some of those use cases. So we just don't talk. We also make it practical, to make sure that you can move from, thesis to something that's in production.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Simon Shikoli, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation and sharing these insights.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the next stages, especially looking at Passport and where that will take us in terms of readiness and assessment.
Right.
But I think also the fact that you've been able to unpack for us that it's not about this fancy big ticket Silicon Valley style of approach to AI. There is this other more pragmatic, shall I call it right-sized approach for places like Kenya and Africa, where it can be affordably done, can be done in incremental steps and have significant interest or outcomes, as you pointed out, including even agentic AI working within a small financial services organization in Kenya, and they're seeing commercial outcomes immediately. And I think that's the kind of communication people need to hear about practical AI versus some of this overhyped stuff that we're hearing about globally. So thank you so much for sharing those insights, and we're glad to have you on the Pure Digital Passion podcast.
Thank
you, Moses.
Yeah.
Thank you, Moses.
So there you have it, Akili AI from Shikoli and Simon, giving us all the insights around what it takes to build and deploy and also manage your AI across different parameters. We are seeing us moving beyond the basic AI implementations right here in Kenya using platforms that are agentic and also agents. And it's really showing us that there is a real future and a real opportunity for companies like Akili AI and what they're doing within the local market, but more importantly for your organization, small or large, to go way beyond the chatbot and do things that are incredibly impactful to the bottom line. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Pure Digital Passion podcast. We will catch you in the next one.